direct from the web, it's Billy Masters Live. And now, please welcome your host, Billy Masters.
Oh my God, here we are, another show. Hey everybody, welcome to Billy Masters Live. I am, of course, your host, Billy Masters. Who else would I be? And today, thank you, Monica. Today is Thursday, May 12th, 2020. 22. Oh my God, 20. I got so excited saying 2020 and now it's 2022. I don't know where 2021 went. Programming note. Next week, there will be no show because I'm on the road. I will be traveling to New York and there will be a lot to talk about after that trip. So just so you know, there will not be a show next Thursday. But if you ever want to know what's going on, just go to billymasters.com. Everything is there. There's a new column every week. There are programming notes. There's, whatever you need to know is there. Also, if you go, I'm supposed to tell you this. I never do. There's a little logo right there. Is that where it is? I think it's there somewhere. Anyway, it's on the YouTube page. Just click on that button. And if you click on it, you can subscribe to this channel. You can know when all the shows are coming up. And there's a bell. Apparently, you're supposed to click the bell, and then it will remind you when things are going on. Frankly, it's all very Pavlovian, and I'm not interested in that. I've got too much control in my life already. So last week I spoke, one of our first guests was Levi Kreis, who is touring in the national touring company of Hadestown. I did not see Hadestown before the interview. I hate interviewing people before I see something because after I see it, I've got like 72 new questions and I'm not bringing Levi back. I love Levi. We're friends. I can only talk about Hadestown too many times. But here's the one thing that I thought about. Hadestown is about Greek mythology, characters from Greek mythology. So you've got Persephone and Hades, you've got Orpheus and Eurydice. And these are tales that have been told on stage since like 6 BC, 10 BC. And I'm sitting in the audience, and at one point it occurred to me that I am watching a show that people have been watching for centuries, for millennia. And it was two things occurred to me. First, I got a little overwhelmed at the universality of these stories because they can become as relevant as they are today because of the craftsmanship of the playwrights, of the authors, etc. The other thing I was struck with is, relatively speaking, I am so young. I really am. Now, the woman next to me was not so young. She may have remembered opening night of Hadestown, but I just felt, my God, I'm like a drop in the bucket next to Eurydice. So last week was an exhausting week because I just got back to LA and it shows 3 nights in a row. I saw Hadestown. I saw today's play that we're talking about, Afterglow. And then my friend Christopher Titus, comedian Christopher Titus, was filming his 10th stand-up special, and I was there helping him. He will be on a future show. But I did not anticipate doing a show about Afterglow. And here is the power of theater. The power of theater is that you think something is going to be, oh, I'm seeing the LA company of this, and who's going to care about it in Omaha, Nebraska? And not only, I must say, I did not realize how huge a hit Afterglow was. I knew because I wanted to see it in New York before the pandemic. So I knew it was a big hit in New York. I didn't know it is a worldwide sensation. There are companies everywhere. And even if you haven't seen the show, and if it's not coming to Omaha, Nebraska, although I'm sure it will eventually, you will identify with the topics. And, this is such a good cast. I wanted to make sure that I spoke to them because I had a lot of questions. So first, I'm going to tell you Afterglow, Afterglow. You know, it's a little early for me. Afterglow, theplay.com. All of the information about the international productions are there. So you can find out about the Los Angeles production. You can see pictures. You can read about it. But my first guest is the playwright of this. Really, it has become a sensation. And not just with gay people, like with all people. Very interesting. We have a lot to talk about. So let me welcome my first guest, although we're not calling him S. Asher Gelman. Hold on a second. Hey, Asher.
Hey, Billy, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm great.
Welcome to the show. You know, I had wanted to see this show. I guess it was, did you open in 2019?
We
in New
opened
York?
in New York in summer 2017.
Oh, Jesus. Well, by 2019, I would have been late. But one of the things that people should know, and this does not happen often, is that it was an off-Broadway show that just kept extending and extending to the point that it broke records at the theater. Was it Davenport? Is that where you guys were?
Correct. We were at the loft at the Davenport Theater.
Okay. And like, I mean, people, and you know, we hate to be crass on Billy Masters Live, but I mean, over $1 million of ticket sales. That doesn't mean you have over $1 million. So I want people to know. So I constantly was reading about it, and not just in gay press. I was reading about it in Backstage. I was reading about it in Variety. It really became a phenomenon. So, you know, first, I want to ask, because you had written, was this your third play? Okay. So let's talk about where you came from before the Afterglow came up. Where you were born here, but did you live in Israel for a while?
So I was born in the United States and went to college. I was born right outside Washington, D.C., Chevy Chase, Maryland. Went to college, went to Bard College in New York, upstate.
Okay.
And then immediately after graduating, I moved to Tel Aviv, where I spent a decade of my life before relocating to New York City.
And why?
Why did I
Not that there's anything wrong with it, yeah, but I'm curious. What
I visited a lot during college, and I just felt a real connection with the people there, with the vibe. There's a way of life. Tel Aviv is a city that it's a shared city. Mm-hmm. Whereas like my Tel Aviv is your Tel Aviv, is his Tel Aviv, is her Tel Aviv. Whereas like a city like New York is 8 million cities sharing the same geographical location. Right. And it was a really great place for me to experience my young adulthood.
Did you think to yourself that professionally speaking, it was a good place for you, or is it more for lifestyle?
It's funny because my opinions on that have shifted over my life. I definitely moved to Tel Aviv because that was the place I wanted to like build a life. Okay. And my background is mostly is in both dance and theater. And at the time I was more focused on dance, and Tel Aviv has a fantastic dance scene. So it made a lot of sense professionally as well to be there. And then in the last couple of years of my life there, I started moving more into theater, and then just kind of realized that there was a ceiling there for theater, and I had hit it. And so, you know, and I was working as the artistic director of Tel Aviv's premier English language performing arts organization, The Stage. But I wanted to do more. And so so my husband and I decided to relocate to New York. And the rest is history. And now I'm on your show.
So, you know, it's interesting because I'm very good at eavesdropping. And so I heard some things from people in the audience that made me believe that there are aspects of the play Afterglow that are autobiographical.
Yes.
And just to put in a nutshell what Afterglow is about, it is a married gay couple. Are they married?
Yes, they are.
Okay, so it's a married gay couple who are awaiting the birth of a child that they're going to have via surrogate.
Correct.
One of them is turning 35.
Yes.
Are they the same age?
Yeah. They're approximately the
Okay,
same age. Like
that's what I
135,
assume.
one's like 34 or 33, but they're the same
Okay,
age.
yeah, they don't say it, but they certainly are contemporaries of each other.
Correct.
And they have a somewhat open relationship that they bring thirds in and apparently can play on their side as long as they're not dating on the side. Is that fair to say?
They have an open relationship. I wouldn't say it's somewhat open. I'd say it's open.
Okay.
And
But there are some rules.
yes, the rules are no sleepovers. I think what's interesting about this couple is that they are kind of at sort of like closer to the beginning of exploring consensual non-monogamy,
Mhm.
and they think they have it a lot more figured out than they actually do, and that that bites them in the ass later in the play. I don't want to give away too
Yeah,
much.
there was interestingly, again, why I said that this can pertain to straight people as well as gay is there was a straight couple sitting near me, and interestingly enough, it was the guy who said it to the girl, and he turned to her and said, "And that's why we don't have an open relationship."
So
So it was very interesting to hear people's reactions to it.
it's interesting to hear that reaction because on the surface, Afterglow, I think, presents very much as like a cautionary tale against polyamory, against consensual non-monogamy. And people will say that the play is about polyamory, is about consensual non-monogamy. And it's not. The
Okay.
play is about communication and honesty.
Well, it
And
is definitely about honesty. Yeah.
it uses polyamory and consensual non-monogamy as the device, but it's not about those things. And I think
Yeah,
what
I agree with you actually because somebody also said during it oh, they didn't somebody near me said if they had communicated more, they wouldn't have run into these problems, and I think there's a lot of truth in that.
I think we don't talk in our society. We don't talk about our feelings. We are so afraid of our thoughts in general. We're afraid that our thoughts incriminate us in action. Uh,
Mhm.
and having a thought and performing an action are two very different things. And I think we need to start getting in the habit of having more conversations because we're so afraid. We're so afraid of our thoughts that we don't share them, and then then we get into trouble because of it. I remember when we were doing the production in New York, I had friends, or I should say acquaintances. I had acquaintances who I'm very picky about the words I use to describe relationships. I
As
had
you should.
acquaintances who would flat out refuse to bring their partners to the show for fear of the conversation that it would engender. Which
Absolutely.
to me is like, if your relationship is so fragile that it cannot withstand a conversation about a play, then you should end your relationship.
Yeah, one of my favorite things to do is go to plays with friends and then talk about it and dissect it and what you thought and what I thought. And it tells you so much about that other person, their opinions.
Absolutely.
So the fact that you wouldn't want to know that would be troubling, certainly.
Exactly.
What I heard from somebody is that um and again, please correct me if I'm wrong, that a lot of this was based on your life, that you had been in a situation like this, and that um the one thing that I heard that was different was that your partner had thrown you a surprise 30th birthday party, not a 35th birthday party.
So my husband had thrown me a
Okay.
surprise 30th birthday party because this was many moons ago when I was 30 years old.
Not that many. I mean,
Let's just say 8 moons ago. It was 8 moons
all
ago.
right. That's not a lot of moons.
No, it's based on my life.
Mhm.
Shortly after my husband Monty and I opened our relationship, I got involved with this man for a couple of months, and I did that thing where I thought that telling everybody 90% of the truth was, basically the same as like telling everybody the truth. And so
Sure.
my approach is very Machiavellian, that if the end is right, it justifies the means, that like I could somehow like find a way to navigate the situation mostly honestly, but also like not really honestly.
And when
and
you say you got involved with somebody, had you both gotten involved initially, as in the play?
No, it was like it was mostly me. Like he sort of came into our lives, but the connection between me and this other gentleman was very clear from the very beginning. And
Okay.
and so like that's something that, again, like when it came to dramatizing this, I really wanted to lean out of the original experience,
Right, of course.
because the person that I was dating made it very clear from the beginning that he understood that I was married and that my husband was my primary relationship, and he did not want to have any sort of competition or whatnot. And of course, when it comes to polyamory, there must not be any competition. The competition is the death of polyamory, or just consensual non-monogamy in general. And as the relationship progressed, it became clear to me that he actually did want to essentially supplant my husband. And so it was very like cliche, very sort of like homewreckery.
Which
And
doesn't happen so much in the play, at least the way it is
no,
portrayed in Los Angeles.
it doesn't. So like with the character Darius, who is based loosely based. I don't even want to say based on this gentleman so much as based on the experience.
Absolutely.
It was more. I was more interested in like, okay, like what happens if you like remove the villainy from it, like, and you allow that the situation to be the antagonist rather than any one character.
And that people stumble into where it goes.
So, because I feel like, personally, I feel like writing villains for the sake of writing of having a villain is lazy. Because nobody believes himself to be the villain. Nobody believes themselves to be the villain of their own story.
Absolutely.
Like even the most villainous people in our collective history never, they're never like petting the bald cat in their chair.
They believe they're doing something for the right reasons, right? Of course.
So this notion of like painting somebody or creating a character who's just evil is, I think it's lazy. I think the way that
it's also not interesting.
Not interesting. I mean, it's funny because also like conflict is interesting, but it's only interesting if you can find like an inventive way of creating conflict.
Yeah, and if it's organic and true to the situation. Because if it's not, then you're just throwing conflict in out of nowhere, and audiences can see through that.
Of course. And
one of the things I loved about this was that, again, opening night audiences, you really can never judge a play from opening night audiences. But nonetheless, I was there. And what I noticed is that the alliances of the audience en masse shifted between characters based on what's happening. They may think, oh, this guy is so wrong for doing this, but oh my God, this one's wrong for doing that. And now I feel sympathy for that. And I didn't speak to, God knows I didn't speak to everybody, but it did seem to me that there was a universality, that everybody could see parts of themselves in each character in different experiences in their own lives.
Yeah, I mean well, I mean that's the hope, that's the goal. You want to create characters that people can relate to, and the more that people can relate to the characters in your show, the more effect it can have, the more meaningful it becomes. And so that was really important to us, was really creating these characters that felt relatable, that felt like humans who or maybe even parts of yourself. And that, yes, as you said, that like that people would shift regarding like who they identified most with in the story based on where they were at that point in the story.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to show, we don't have B-roll from the LA production. However, we do have this from the Waterloo production. I just want people to get a flavor of the show. So watch this little 1-minute trailer. So that gives people just an idea of the tone of the play. One thing that I know, did you have anything to do with directing that production?
I did not.
Okay, because I know that, another thing that's always interesting to me is when a playwright directs their own work, because I think that in many ways you get a very clear vision of what they wrote because they can see it crystallize on stage, although sometimes having an outside director gives you a fresh perspective and a whole other point of view. What I liked about this is that, and it's interesting to know that you're from a dance background, is that the scene changes are all very carefully choreographed, and you're never taken out of the atmosphere of the play because it's seamlessly done by the characters. Sometimes you feel like they're in character because they do interact with each other, and sometimes they're just moving things. I presume that's something you did in New York as well.
Yes, we did to. I would say when it came to the LA production, because when I first did the New York production, I came from a dance background, and I was sort of hell bent on being like, okay, like now I'm a director, and I'm gonna do this as a director, not as a choreographer, and so we kind of added choreography like a little late in the game for the New York production. This production, I knew from the get-go that I really wanted to lean into my choreographic background and make dance that much more integral to the story. So, for instance, there's a dance sequence that happens at the very beginning of the play where the characters Josh and Darius meet for the first time by themselves. And in New York, I sort of like through that transition to, or through that moment together, it was dance, but it wasn't like highly choreographed. And this one is, and I was able to really like take a step back and find a way non-verbally to show what this relationship is between these two characters and like how they discover themselves and discover each other.
And then it happened similarly with the next pairing.
Yes, exactly. But the idea was, again, like to really create this sense of swirling that from the moment the show begins to the moment the show ends, it's constantly moving. The stage is never empty. The stage is never dark. There are no stage hands that come on and like move things around. And it was also so wonderful is, like we got to work with the New York team came out to do the Los Angeles production 5 years later. And all of us have 5 more years of experience. And it's great, like coming back into that room with people you've worked with and worked with so well. Because you also, all of you have like a sense of history. Like we know the things that we tried and reasons why they did or did not work. And like things that needed to be improved. And so like when we did the original New York production, it was supposed to only last for 8 weeks. Like it was supposed to be this like teeny tiny little like off-Broadway show that ran for 8 weeks that a few people saw, and then like we all learned a bunch for like the next thing that we did, whatever that was. And then and we also just when we opened in New York, we opened summer 2017. It was like, it felt like every 2-3 weeks there was some article in the Washington Post or New York Times or Huffington Post about some permutation of consensual non-monogamy. It was really like, it was like the hot,
it was a hot topic, yeah,
that summer. And like, we just happened to have this show that, you know, that explored these issues. And so it blew up, but like, the set was built for an 8-week run. It was not built for a 14-month run. And, you know, by the end of our run in New York, like, that poor set was being held together like it was like a drag queen's dress. It was just held together with hot gun, like hot glue and duct tape. That was it.
Well, you know, bringing up the production, and I said this in my review, is that this production is beautiful. The set, it looks expensive. I don't know if it was, but it certainly looks expensive. And it works very, very well. It's a playable set, which not all sets are.
So Ann Beiersdorfer, our set designer, and Jamie Roderick, our lighting designer, worked very close. They worked very closely in the New York production, and they worked very closely in this production. And the idea was, again, like what do we do if we turn up the volume on this? If now that we know what we have, like what was the dream? Like, what are the things that we can do? And what I love about the set that we have is that it lives in an abstract place. It's mirrors. It's these sort of amorphous cubes that can be shifted in anything. And like, what I love about that is that because it lacks specificity, it actually adds more specificity, because you as the audience member, you can make that your living room. You can make that your bedroom. Like you can put yourself in that situation and not look at like a set of somebody else's home. If that makes sense.
But isn't that, it makes sense, because isn't that also the same thing about the play? I quote all the time, because I remember when Nia Vardalos was doing the one-woman version of My Big Fat Greek Wedding, and she had told me so many people said to her, make it more universal, make it more not Greek, blah, blah, blah. And she had said, but what they didn't understand, the more specific it was, the more universal it was, because others can see themselves in the specificity. And I think that's the same thing that happens here, which is why I believe this is so universal for straight couples, gay couples, bisexuals, whatever. They're all going to see themselves, because ultimately we are all people who have relationships.
Yes. I mean, and that's, I mean, you're 100% right. Like the specificity, you
don't shy away from the specificity of the characters, which I really love.
I'm talking about specifically the specificity when it comes to like the set. Like when it comes to Afterglow, like Afterglow, while it's based in realism when it comes to the dialogue and how the characters interact with each other, it exists in a much more abstract space. Again, there's a lot of dance. The set mimics spaces without actually, or rather, the set stands in for spaces without specifically being any single one of them.
Right. And speaking, you mentioned dialogue. One of the things that I loved, and it is a pet peeve of mine, is you write very believable dialogue, very character specific dialogue. There aren't moments that somebody says something and you go, what the hell nobody talks like that, which you do in so many plays. There is never a moment that doesn't seem honest, organic to that character. And I think that's also a credit to your actors.
We have phenomenal actors, and I'm so blessed to have had the opportunity to work with them on this piece.
Go ahead.
All of them are so just like, they're so willing and game, and they're not precious. I think that makes a huge difference when you're making work, having people who just want to throw themselves into the thing. And we were able to establish a shorthand very, very early on in the process, and just made working on this piece like such an unbelievable joy. So I could not be more grateful to have such a talented team to work with on this.
Well, and I think for a play like this, that is vital, because again, the wrong person in any of the roles would be the kiss of death for the show, because they are so intertwined. And vulnerable. I mean, vulnerable emotionally, vulnerably physically. You know, it's a lot to ask of actors, and they all perform really well.
Not only that, also it was just beautiful to watch them develop their own relationship with each other, and that happened very quickly. And that, again, as you said, like, that's not always a given, you know.
Yeah.
We had never had all three of the actors in the same room until the first read through.
Oh, really? You didn't do chemistry tests at all?
No, not with all three.
Mhm.
And so again, like, as you said, like, it could have gone either way. And luckily, you know,
Absolutely.
they just got along so well, and they are so gracious to each other, and they care, and they care about each other, and they show that constantly, at both on and off stage. And it's again, like, with a piece like that, like this, it is so necessary to have people who are in your corner, and everybody is just working so hard to make this the best experience it can be, both on stage and off stage. And so I just commend not only the actors, but the entire team who worked on this. It's such an incredible joy to work on this.
Well, and I think the other thing that can't be minimized is that you want to work with people that you want to spend time with. You know, I would much rather take somebody who isn't ideal for the role, that was just pleasant and a good, you know, a good sport in terms of jumping in and doing what needs to be done.
Yes.
You know, we've all been in those situations. So, but let me have first, let's see, who will I have join us first? You know, in so many ways, you know, I said to one of the actors, you know, you have the hardest role, but when I think about it, they all have hard roles. But the first person let's have join us is Noah Bridgestock. Noah, hi Noah.
Hey, how you guys doing? Hey, Asher.
Hey, Don, how you doing?
Good, miss you.
Miss
Do
you.
you have a show tonight?
Yes, we do.
Oh, okay. Well, and Asher, I didn't ask you. You still in town? I know you were traveling.
No, I'm in New York now.
Oh well,
I know. I left
he's
on
gone.
Sunday.
Noah, can I ask you what was, you know, when you read the audition? I assume you saw an audition notice. How did you come to the play?
So I actually had a friend involved in the back end of the run in New York, so I was aware of and had seen the play.
Oh, wow!
In, I guess it was 2018, beginning of 2018. So I knew what I was in store for when I saw the audition notice.
And did you know? In so many ways, it seems to me that many of the characters could play other roles. And in fact, you have a swing that has to cover all the roles. So did you gravitate towards this role initially?
Yeah, I remember seeing the New York production and feeling particularly drawn to Josh in general. The idea of somebody who is constantly trying to keep every ball in the air and make everyone as happy as possible is hit a little close to home.
Yeah, one of the things about the character is we see that the more he gets, the more he kind of loses himself and really withdraws. And, you know, at a certain point, you're in a fetal position. I thought to myself, you know, when you try to please everybody, you end up pleasing nobody.
Yeah, and it just comes back and bites you. I think that's something that really drew me to the character, because if I wanted to take a magnifying glass to some of the less desirable traits that I know I embody, trying to please everybody is that's towards the top of the list.
I want to also have us joined by James Hayden Rodriguez.
Hi.
Hey, James. No, I'm just going to put you backstage for a minute. James, same question to you. How did you come to the play?
I also saw the play in New York. I was living down the street, and a friend of mine was playing Alex. So I had the opportunity to see it. And in my head, I thought, oh, I would love to be a part of that one day. I didn't know how it would come about. And then I moved to LA and this happened, and it was just so serendipitous. But yeah, I saw it years ago.
Did you feel that Alex was the role for you?
No.
Oh, no. We've never had this conversation. So which was the role for you?
Yeah, but that was the first audition that you sent me was Alex. And no, when I saw it, I was like, I know I'm not a Darius. I'm probably in my personal life a little more of a Josh. So that would have been the easiest thing for me to come in and just do naturally. But Alex has been just such a challenge for me as an actor. And it's always very exciting when I get those, because normally when I go into roles, they're just kind of like my bread and butter thing that I can kind of do easily. And whenever I get a nice challenge, it's really fun for me. So Alex certainly is a little outside of who I am in real life.
Yeah, one of the things I noticed, and perhaps Asher, this sort of plays to you, it goes to you, is that in the New York production, this role was played by, was he white and blonde?
No, just white.
Okay. Because I remember there was a blonde in the mix. I'm like, where the hell did that come from? So I always find it interesting that really the roles can be played by any ethnicity. Does that change the dynamic of the characters at all?
I don't think it did. James, how do you feel?
I don't think any of the roles are specifically written for any race, but for me, whenever I come into any project, I like to inject as much of my own personal experience, especially being a Black actor, a Puerto Rican actor. Like, I love to just bring as much of that into my character so that people see these little nuances that you might not get with a white person playing the same role.
Yeah, it was interesting. I saw some footage from other productions with all white characters, and I thought I'm sorry to say, I thought to myself, oh, how bland, because I had seen, it was nice to see diversity on stage in Los Angeles not being an issue.
Yeah.
You
might not.
I was just
West Hollywood, but you'll get it in this play.
Yeah, that's probably true. So, and are you a West Hollywood native, or how long have you been here?
I'm born and raised in New York City, transplant to Los Angeles. It's been 4 years now.
Oh, cool. Well, we are lucky to have you, because you really, all of you do a great performance. I'm going to put you backstage for a minute, and I'm going to bring on our homewrecker, Nathan. The interesting thing is that there were huge stretches of the play that you just feel for your character, that in the hands of a lesser actor, I'd say, oh, he's the twink homewrecker. And in fact, you played him so that I actually felt really like he was a victim of circumstances as much as everybody else.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, definitely. And that's how I see it. I don't see him as a homewrecker.
No, I don't think he actually is. First off, because he's not the instigator, at least not the way you play him.
No, I mean, I think he always asks throughout the play, like, is everybody okay with this? Like, I just want to make sure he's a very like caring person. And I think that's in the text as well. But definitely in my portrayal, I wanted to make sure I wasn't like some jealous demon twink who like came between these two people.
Well, and one of the things I like about the way you play him is that you really seem to be the most forthright person in the play, and almost in many ways really the moral center of it, because you want to make sure that you have to actually be convinced to go along with anything. You are not, maybe not the first time. I think that you probably jumped into that feet first, but afterwards it really is like, is this okay with everybody, and I'm not sure, and I think I'm going to leave town, and blah blah blah. So have you found in your life, have you run into characters like this?
Like, you mean people who are always checking in with other people, or?
Yeah, that, somebody who really is, wanting to be very above board, very like, before I do this, is this okay with everybody?
Yeah, that's me, like
Is it
100%.
really?
I'm very much a person that's like always asking people, how are you feeling? Are you okay? Are you doing okay? Are you doing it? Maybe to the point of detriment. But I think I relate to that a lot, because I'm somebody that I always want, the truth is really important to me. And if I feel like I'm in a situation where people aren't being 100% truthful, or they're not speaking because they feel uncomfortable to say how they're feeling, then I always want to check in and make sure everything's okay before I do something. That doesn't always mean I prevent from doing something wrong, but I still do it.
Was this the role that you wanted?
Um, I originally I auditioned to God, 3 years ago, 3 years ago now? 2 years ago. 2 years ago for this show, before the pandemic. I got cast in the show
Oh, wow.
2 days before we went into lockdown. So
we were at final callbacks on
Yeah.
March 12th, 2020, and
Yeah.
we were
Oh,
in
wow.
final
Was
callbacks
that for Los Angeles?
for Los Angeles. We were in final callbacks when we received the notification that Broadway had shut down, and so all of us at callbacks were like frantically trying to rebook all of our travel plans, because we were supposed to stay an extra couple days in LA, and so we ended up leaving directly from callbacks to go straight to LAX to fly home. And incidentally, we flew back 2 years to the date to Los Angeles to complete the audition process.
So Nathan, which role were you up for, or
So originally I auditioned for Alex, and I got a callback for Alex as well. And then when I went to the callback, I read my callback scene. And then I waited out in the lobby, and then the casting director came in and was like, we actually want you to read the role of Darius for a few more like chemistry reads that we're going to do coming up. And I was like, okay, cool. And then I was handed 2 sides, and I learned them in an hour in my car. And then I came back and read Darius. And it was like kind of one of those things where like you go back into the audition room, and it just clicked. And I could even see it on like everybody's face who was sitting at the tables, like Asher and all of them. And they were like, okay, this is where he's going to fit in.
Did you feel it as well? I mean, for you, with the role immediately, or did you have to really shift from your idea?
I definitely shifted my tactic, because Alex is such a vastly different character. He has to have a lot of control, and Darius is the opposite of that. He's a little bit more free-willing, and takes things from the heart. So he's like very adaptable to each person he meets. But Alex is a person who's very much like, I'm set in my ways. I'm going to do it this way. That's how it's going to be. I do relate to Darius a lot more than I relate to Alex.
I'm going to have the other boys join us. So hold on a second. Oh, wait, how do I do this? There's a way to get, there you go. We got everybody here. Okay. And let's put our Homewrecker in the middle.
Oh,
there you go.
Whoa.
So here's my question to everybody is, first off, have any of you, we'll just go around aside from Asher, starting with Nathan, have you been in any situation similar to this?
No. I don't know. I am in an open me and my husband are open in different ways. We have a little bit more stricter rules. So
again,
yes.
So you're open, but there are very solid guidelines.
Solid, and it doesn't leave us a lot of room to do a lot. So whereas like this, I feel like Josh and Alex, they're a little bit more like you can date other people kind of thing, which is not in this case.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think it's been, as Asher said, could be a cautionary tale. So now you know this probably firms up those lines even more. James, what about you?
When I was young and I first came out, I found
When you were
myself.
young, my God, you're like 30, I'm guessing 32?
When I first came out, I found myself in no comment. I found myself in a
It's okay.
position a lot. I had a lot of older gay friends who were married or coupled, and I kept finding myself in this position where they wanted me to be this third. And I was like, oh, this is so prevalent in the gay community. And that was kind of my first introduction to the whole like open relationship, polyamorous thing. And I've experienced every type of relationship. I have a lot of friends who are poly, so I've been able to pull from all of these different experiences for this show.
Aside from being, kind of cast in the Darius role because you were young and people were after you, have you been in a relationship where you've either been one of the people in an open relationship or the conversation came up?
Oh, yes, often.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think it's, again, like you guys are talking about, it is just a very universal story. I think every relationship I've been in, this has come up, and it's something that we've talked about, and it's never gotten to this point. Again, this is not a cautionary tale, but just one way that it could happen if you're not open and communicative with your partners. But yes, I have experienced this in some form.
Noah, how about you?
Short answer, no. No, I have maintained my status as single as a Pringle for an extended period of time. I do have a select group of friends who have been through similar experiences with either consensual non-monogamy or polyamory. So I've had a little bit of that to pull from, but as far as me,
not personally.
Not personally.
Yeah, I'm interested when you get to play a role like this. If you haven't experienced it personally, either from one end or the other, so to speak, I wonder if there's a big learning curve that you have to be brought up to speed to really play it honestly.
Yes and no. I mean, luckily we have Asher, who is so forthright with his experiences, but also I think the fact that this couple they lack the proper vocabulary to communicate efficiently, that lends itself to it being fairly okay that I don't have any personal experience with it.
And you're getting an education, certainly.
I'd also like to jump in because you mentioned cautionary tale, and I just want to contextualize when you say cautionary tale. The cautionary tale of Afterglow is not about polyamory or consensual non-monogamy.
Right, it's the honesty and communication.
Is honesty. I mean, listen, like I am very polyamorous.
We're getting to you. Don't worry about it.
Oh, okay. I don't know.
No, because I was actually going to say, and again, some of the things one overhears in a men's room, that you had been through a similar situation and that your relationship did survive it. Is that correct?
Correct.
So because that was one of the discussions in the audience is, do we think that these characters actually were going to be able to survive this?
Well, I mean, so for me and my husband, we've been together for 13 years, and we have spent that time really zeroing in on what is. We knew from the very beginning of our relationship that we were committed to each other. And for the past 13 years, we've been sort of figuring out, okay, like what is that commitment and what is simply commitment adjacent? Like what are, because we in our society, we really love to equate commitment and exclusivity and also love and ownership. And those are very different terms. And like, I know that I'm not going anywhere. My husband Monty knows that he's not going anywhere. So with that, understanding like what is possible, and my husband and I, we have been with our partner Tony for the past 6 years. We did not know that we were in a relationship with him for the first 2.5 years of that relationship. In fact, actually, Afterglow was running in New York, and we were blissfully unaware that we were in a throuple. My boyfriend Stefano, with whom I've been for the past 1.5 years, came out to LA with me to live with me for 5 weeks while I mounted the production, and my entire polycule came out for opening. So like,
oh my God, there's 4 people involved at this point, or 5. Not that it matters, but
yeah, I mean, like I've got all
right, well, you're like Johnny Appleseed there with your seed, but if it works, it's not a judgment call, because I'm always interested when it works, and it obviously has.
It's about communication. It's really that simple. It's about communication.
But do you consider your husband the main relationship?
I would say at this point I have 2 primaries: my husband and my boyfriend Stefano.
Okay. It's also interesting. I'm getting lots of stuff that I did, and I thought I heard everything in the men's room. Do you hear from people in the straight community that they're identifying with this as much, or is it more of a gay phenomenon?
So I would say certainly when we did the New York production, it was almost exclusively gay men who would come to the show. Like every now and then in the performance report, we would read like, there was a girl in the audience tonight, which has not been the case for Los Angeles. I think like
there were a lot of girls opening night.
Well, I think as per usual, like when it comes to sort of pushing boundaries and whatnot, it's like it's always going to be the queer community that's going to step it up first, and then once everybody else sort of figures like, oh, like this is a possibility, then as queer people, we live on the fringes, and because of that, we define what is normal. That normal isn't in the center. We provide the framework within you can play, but ultimately like we decide what is normal by living in the fringes. And so because of that, because our straight counterparts can see that like, oh, hey, we've figured this out, sometimes successfully, sometimes less successfully, but like then there's more of an invitation to try these things, because other people have had these lived experiences, and other people can have years worth of advice that they can give. I think it can be really scary to go into something like this without
knowledge,
guidance.
Yeah. To the actors, you've only been doing it now, I guess, just about 2 weeks. What has been feedback from audience members? Let's start with James.
Well, opening night was really fun. We had a beautiful after party, and I think everyone there came up to me afterward and they're like, I identified so much with this story, and this is straight people, this is queer people, everyone. Oh, I'm the Josh in this relationship. Oh, I'm definitely the Alex. So many of these conversations that night, people pulling me into a corner and telling me their personal trauma with their triad that's for polyamory. It was pretty wild. So it's nice to know that it is actually that universal, and that everyone is identifying with these characters and not just gay people.
Noah, your character drives a lot of the, I don't want to say the chaos that ensues, but certainly you're certainly central to everything happening on stage. And I'm curious how people react to you afterwards, because where your character is for, say, 75% of the play is not where he is for the last 25%. So you leave the theater with a very different perspective on your character than you had most of the night. Do you get that kind of feedback?
Yeah. It depends on the night and the performance, and because I have 2 of the most giving scene partners I've ever worked with, the show has dynamic that changes incrementally each night. And there are some evenings when I have the ability to argue my case very well. And there are other nights that I am out-argued. And the audience absolutely picks up on that and doesn't enjoy a lot of things that come out of my mouth afterwards. It's been fun to watch the way that an audience dynamic can shift the play, and how I feel on those nights. Okay, I have to argue my case that much harder to get even one of them on my side.
Absolutely. There's been a lot of discussion about nudity on stage. And of course, we just had the photos of Jesse Williams and Take Me Out leaking. You guys are all very naked on stage. One of the things that I love about the staging is that you get the nudity out of the way in the first 3 minutes. And so at that point, you don't, I mean, yes, you notice it. Trust me. I was in the front row. I noticed. But it becomes kind of, oh, that's just the way it is. And you can focus on the play. But how do you feel about being nude on stage? Nathan?
Well, it's not my first time. So
oh, where else have you been naked?
Shockingly so, at the same theater doing a musical 2 years ago or 3 years ago, Shooting Star. And,
Shooting Star with Florian, of course.
Yeah, with Florian. I was naked in that show very briefly, but and then I did in college. I did a dance piece that required some nudity as well. So I'm pretty comfortable with nudity on stage. Although with the Jesse Williams incident, it did kind of like rattle me a little bit to think that people could do that. So that's been interesting with that happening this week.
And we should point out that if people go to your social media, there are a good amount of photos of you. So if they really want to see, not complete nude, but like they can just check it out online.
Yeah,
and
you know
don't
what?
Don't sneak a camera in.
As they say in the opening, just buy another effing ticket if you want to.
Well, there is that, right?
Yeah.
And they're not that expensive. James, have you been nude on stage before?
No, I've never been nude before. Yeah, I was a little nervous about it, I guess. I certainly was rattled before the Jesse Williams incident. I was asking stage management, like, do we have a plan for, if we catch people with cameras, because I don't want anything like that to happen. But as far as the nudity goes in the story, I think it's very tastefully done and artfully done, and I don't think the story would make sense without it. So I think because it's in like such good service to the story that it makes it really important. And after night one, I was like, oh, that wasn't hard at all. That wasn't, I guess, as
well. And there certainly was an audible reaction to one of your entrances. So, that's got to be somewhat.
I can see the whole audience shift. Like once I take my robe off,
yeah,
a lot of like shit through my peripheral. I'm like, all right, got him.
And it was funny being in the first row on the side. I kind of felt it behind me. I'm like, what? Oh, that's what's happening. Okay.
It's new for me, but it's been a fun experience.
Noah, nudity stage, go.
Yeah, I've done a couple productions of The Full Monty.
Oh, okay.
So I've had to deal with both nudity on stage and people wanting to photograph it. And I just it is never something that isn't a concern. I'm comfortable being nude on stage, but I think that there's an agreement that we all enter into that this is for the service of the art, and it's for the piece, not for you to like gawk and take some pictures. And I think that is not only disrespectful to the actors, but to the self and to art in general. So that has been a big concern of mine as the photos have been circulating with the Jesse Williams situation. I think that it is in such great service to the story and keeps it grounded in such an intimate reality that breaking that seems to be, to me, really disrespectful. And so I just hope
as somebody who has also been nude on stage in a play, I don't want to speak for everybody else because I'm sure everybody's situation is different, but there is absolutely nothing sexy about being nude on stage. I mean, yeah, there might be sexy moments with a partner, but like it isn't a situation that is conducive to like getting, all hot and bothered. Because you are focused on the work you're there doing. The nudity is just happenstance. Although I will caution you, if anyone's interested in doing a nude play, should you ever be in this situation, don't sleep with a co-star, because nothing good will come of it. I will tell you right now. You will go from having sexual tension to just tension. So, Asher, how's the nude? I'm just telling you, boys. If you're thinking of fooling around, it's just disaster. Wait till the closing night party. Asher, speaking of which, Asher, how many different cast members did you have in New York during the run? Roughly.
I think like 8 or 9 people at some point or another were on payroll as cast. I mean, again, we ran for 14 months, so
right. And was there ever an issue with the nudity with all of those people?
What do you mean?
In terms of either anyone being uncomfortable or having an issue within an audience, has that become a problem?
I mean, look, it's Afterglow. You know what you're signing up for.
Well,
like, and that's the thing is like with Afterglow, like it is very self-filtering. That's the most wonderful thing is like the actor who is going to audition for Afterglow knows what the play is, knows that like there's nudity on stage, knows that they will be naked and they will be close to audience members, and they have to decide whether or not that is something they're comfortable with. And so it's great because what ultimately means is that the people who end up auditioning for the show are the people who are, for the most part, ready, willing, and able to accept the role. And as I said earlier, like these 3 incredibly talented actors are also not precious, about these things, and that makes a huge difference when again they understand that the nudity is there for a reason, that it's not just to sell tickets, it's not salacious, it's not meant to titillate, it's there in service of the story, and ultimately that is again, that's the gift of it, is that you get to work with people who really understand what this play is and what this play needs to be, and you can leave the rest of that outside the room. You don't have to do
all right, but just to sell tickets, can I just say all 3 of these guys are worth seeing naked. There's something for everyone. There's a little smorgasbord right up there. So buy a ticket, but it's a really good play on top of that. And there are plays, as Asher kind of alluded to, that shoehorn nudity in to sell tickets. I have been in those plays. And then this is a play that really has nothing to do with nudity. It's all about relationships, people, human emotions, and honesty. It's still about honesty, but it's about relationships. It's really a relationship play, I think. Wouldn't you say, Asher?
Yes, absolutely. And I will say that when it comes to the nudity, one of the main reasons why I not only decided to include it, but felt that it was absolutely necessary to the production. In fact, if you in my author's note in the script, I expressly forbid removing the nudity from the show. Yes, because ultimately so many of the conversations that are had in Afterglow are based on conversations that I've had, and a lot of them I had while naked. And so to put clothes on those conversations unnecessarily felt disingenuous to the piece, to the content, and essentially to its message.
How long is the play scheduled to run? Or is it open-ended at this point?
We are on sale through June 19th. So I encourage everyone to buy a ticket as soon as possible.
Well, particularly, we should just point out Pride Month is coming up. So I think it's a great play to be around at that point. And there are millions of productions like around the world. I saw footage from a production in Madrid. There's been a few in England. I think is one about to open in Fort Lauderdale?
They just closed a couple months, like a month or two ago in Fort Lauderdale.
Okay. And where else is it playing? Or
Buenos
about to play?
Aires, Bogota, Colombia, and some other places that I don't want to talk about yet because nothing has been finalized and I don't want to jinx anything. But suffice to say, those of you in Omaha, Nebraska may get a chance after all to see Afterglow in your town at some point.
Let me just end with asking each actor, Nathan, if I could just say to you, for a night you can play one of the other roles, what role would you play?
Alex.
Okay. James.
Josh.
Okay. Noah.
Darius.
Well, everything. All right. Well, could Asher, would you like to? Would there ever be a possibility where has any person? This is a really good question. Has any person in, say, another company in New York played two different roles?
I mean, we have the Swing, who
you got the Swing,
obligated to cover all three roles, and we've had a couple Swings who have actually gone on, or at least in the New York production, gone on stage and played all three roles. We've had one actor, Tim Young, who did all three roles within 1 week. Which is,
well, there's an acting challenge, boys. Now, would anybody be up to playing all three roles? Not in one night.
Yeah.
No takers, apparently. You would. All right.
I'll take it.
All right.
You can do it.
So,
give me a challenge.
Guys, thank you all for joining us. Good run. It's at the Hudson Theater. It's Asher, give me the schedule.
Sure. We are playing Thursdays, Fridays, and Saturdays at 8:00 and Sundays at 7:00.
People can get more information and tickets at afterglowtheplay.com. And I wish you a long, healthy run. And hopefully at some point I'll come back and see it again. Because now that I've seen it and thought about it, I now want to see it again. And I think a lot of people would. So thank you. This has been a lot of fun.
You definitely should. You'd be welcome anytime, Billy. Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Take care. Thank you all for watching Billy Masters Live. And next week, as I said, there will be no show. I'm traveling. I'll be in New York. Oh, Asher, maybe I'll see you in New York. But we will be back the following week. I don't remember who we have. Who knows? Anyway, thank you for watching Billy Masters Live. Of course, I have been Billy Masters. And just remember, if we're here, we're live. Take care, guys. Bye-bye.